Okay, so firstly, we're going to start a little bit. Remember last week I was saying that we wanna combine. I have this vision of making two separate shiurim. One is going to be much more like inyan and vertlach on the parsha, and one is seeing the parsha through the lens of Rashi and various other Reshonim. But being that I didn't get to set up two shiurim yet, I didn't prepare two shiurim, so I'm going to try to combine both. So I'll start with a few vertlach, and then we'll get into one sugya from Rashi's perspective al HaTorah. So we know that the parsha famously begins with the Eibishter visiting Avram Avinu on the third day of his bris, and the Eibishter, as the Rashi points out, the Sifsei says the Eibishter appeared. It doesn't say the Eibishter said anything. From here, Rashi learned that why did the Eibishter come? He came to visit him, came to be Mevaker Chayla. Now, despite that, Avram Avinu dropped the Eibishter when three guests came and went to be Machnas Oirach. From here, Chazal taught us famously that Gdoila Achnas Asarchim Yosem Kabbal's Pnei Shechina. So just to share a few verdlach and inspiration on this specific detail. Firstly, where did Avram Avinu know this from? We learned that Gdoila Achnas Asarchim Yosem Kabbal's Pnei Shechina. We learned it from Avram Avinu. But where did Avram Avinu know it from? To drop the Eibishter and run Machnas Archim, there's no precedent for that. So Mela, we learn from Avram Avinu, but where does Avram Avinu know it from? So all the mitzvahs he knew. Firstly, this is a mitzvah, but to ad kedei kach to say drop the Eibishter and go be mekabel pnei archim is a zilzal in the king. We know in shul, if someone comes in, it's all very nice, but there's certainly surim you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to kiss a child, for example, is brought because of the cover of the Eibishter. There's certain things. So it's a good question. So there's a few answers. One of them is that we have in our Parsha, Avram Avinu, when he's begging for his doim v'amoira, he says, Anoichi offer ve'efer. This is, they imagine, Avram Avinu, he's like mamish, he's running a back and forth with the Eibishter. They're handling over this deal. Will you do it for 45? Will you do it? And he's making his cheshbonus with how many minyanim he has, if he has a minyan for each shtot. So Avram Avinu says that I'm like offer va'efer. So Rashi says al asar hinenor alti l'daber v'noichi offer va'efer, says Rashi. Offer I would have been. Let's see it from inside. It's pasuk chav zayin perek yud ches. He says I would have been offer va'efer. I would have been offer through the kings, by the Melchama of the four kings. I would have been, he's mama showing himself like I would have been dust. I'm nothing in front of the Eibishter. If not for the Eibishter, by the Melchama of the four Melachim and the five Melachim, and then he went out against the four, that I would have been earth, and Va'efer, I would have been ashes had the Eibishter not saved me from Nimrod. Chassidus tells us that Avram Avinu was batal umevutal to the Eibishter. He was taken midas chesed, but Avram Avinu was like a chariot. He was like that, just followed the Eibishter blindly. And you mamish see this. I'm saying taking his own son went against by the story of the Akedah, the end of this parsha, goes against everything he was preaching to the whole world. Not to sacrifice basav adam. Oh, simcha. Not to sacrifice basav adam. And Pinchas, can you fill up another few? Shkoyach. There should be more bowls. Oh, from Simcha. So, the first Pirush is brought from Chassidus and Mefarshim. Where did Avram Avinu know? The fact that his body started running towards the Archim, he understood that it means that it has to work al pi Torah. Because Avram Avinu's body, he trained himself into the gene. That's why the nitzitz of Mesiras Nefesh we have is from Avram Avinu, because it was burnt into the gene. So that's a Chassidish pshat. Actually, is a Grada the Gra. The guy in Vilna says an interesting pshat also. He says, Anochi offer va'efer. Sorry, this comes from Rabbi and Eibshitz. Rabbi and Eibshitz says that Anochi offer va'efer. Offer, it's grace-kite that always talks about the future. I'm gonna be. Earth itself is nothing. But if they plant and they invest in me, I'm gonna turn into something big. Then there's Afer. Afer always prides itself in the past. I was a big tree. I was a piece of furniture. I was a house. Each one. And Avraham Avinu was saying, I'm not priding myself, not in the past, not in the future. I'm mamish nothing in front of the Eibishter. And that was the bittul of Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu saw his body running towards the Orchim. He understood that this is. There's another Pirush, a Geshmake Pirush. And this is from Ramiro Primishlan. This is from many other Chassidish Rebbes. But another Pirush, the Shpitavke, brings it in Mayana Shal Teira, that Avraham Avinu, the Eibishter took out the sun to deter Avraham not to invite in guests, right? Right? Kechoy Mayoim. The Eibishter took Hoitzi Chama min Artika. He says, why did the Eibishter need to take out the Chama min Artika? Avraham Avinu thought to himself, the Eibishter didn't need to take out the Chama min Artika. The fact that the Eibishter is here, that should have been enough reason I shouldn't go out. Elamai, the Eibishter hinted to the fact that even if I'm here, you could still run out. And that's why the Eibishter brought an additional backup of Choy Mayoim, so Avraham Avinu doesn't go out. Yeah? I'm going to finish one more Vart. Chaved Reb Michal.
Was it like Kal V'Chomer, or does he learn just like...
He understood from within, from the fact that the Eibishter wasn't enough for the Eibishter to just reveal himself, but it's a Vart to the Baal Shem Tov. As to the Michal. Listen to the Simcha. The Baal Shem Tov fragt azoi. It says, what's enough commitment for us today? Chazal tell us you should know that if it ever happens to you, the Eibishter is revealed to you, and then a guest comes, drop the Shechina and run to the guest. What's the likelihood of any one of us that the Shechina is all of a sudden going to be revealed? And them state that Avraham Avinu taught us, you should drop the Shechina and run to the Eibishter. What's the likelihood? So the Baal Shem Tov says the Chazal wanted to teach us, and the Eibishter demonstrated through putting it in Torah, that sometimes when you machnes oirach, it comes on the expense of mitzvahs, which is the Shechina. He says sometimes having a guest comes at the expense of bittul Torah and the expense of avak lashon hara. You invite a guy in and he starts talking what's on his mind, and by the time you take control of the conversation or whatever, you're making him feel at home, you end up baredding this guy and that guy, and both Rebbes is satmer. You already got from the whole picture. Zok the Baal Shem Tov that this is the Hayra. It's still better to be machnes oirach, even if it's at the expense of. I wouldn't be able to say such a thing. You wouldn't be able to say such a thing. The Baal Shem Tov says such a thing, even if it's at the expense of avak lashon hara and bittul Torah. So that's Baal Shem Tov. Okay. So let's jump into a sugya of Rashi on the Parsha, and then we'll get back a little bit to the other style of the shir, which is some more vertlach, some more inyanim. Okay? So we have a fascinating story. It starts off, our Parsha begins with the Eibishter revealing himself to Mamre. It's mamish a gewaldige story. If you look at Rashi mamish, why in Mamre? Let's do a quick chazara on a little bit of someone was mayor last week after the shir. It's a good chazara on chitas. So why Mamre? Beiloine Mamre, because Mamre, there were three giants, Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre, and Avraham Avinu took a eitzah by these three giants if he should do the bris milah. Yeah? And Mamre was the one that said, go for it, do it. So because of that, the Eibishter revealed himself in the chelka of Mamre. Oh. First of all, what was the suffix? Not only that, he definitely didn't have a suffix. Even more than that, since when do you go ask Oived Avodah Zarah a suggestion whether you should do a mitzvah. Just listen to the Eibishter. What was Avraham Avinu asking? Right? So there's a beautiful vart. This comes from the Ksav Sefer. Ksav Sefer asks, what's he asking? If he should do a bris. Ksav Sefer says that Avraham Avinu wanted to deepen the Nisayin. He wanted to know. We know that Avraham Avinu, and it's very negea to us because you know, fighted him. You know, Avraham Avinu was the type of person that says Avraham ha'ivri. Yeah. He was on one side, the whole world was on the other side. He wanted to make sure is everyone taka on the other side. So he decided he's going to ask, and he's going to do anyways a bris. But he wants to see if they're going to be able. He's sure that they're not going to be able to deter him. So he went, and he asked Honor and Eshkol and Mamre. And I think Honor and Eshkol said not to do a bris, and Mamre said to do a bris. And his schar became greater. As I Dr. Ksav Sefer. Yeah. Went against the... Yeah, he went public with this, and you should just know that it wasn't a small thing. Avraham Avinu doing a bris, I don't want to get into all the pratim, but like, why was this a whole spectacle? It was a real deal, the fact that Avraham Avinu was getting a bris. Not going to get yet. But anyways, so... Right. So, a gewaldige hira you should know from this is the following. That sometimes you see somebody that's going to do a mitzvah, and he's anyways going to do a mitzvah, whether you do like it, you don't like it. Avraham Avinu was planning to do it anyways. Mamre came and said it's a good idea. The Ksav Sefer was pointing out why he went to the other ones, to be magdal the Nesayin, to be magdal the Schar. But I think there's a tremendous hira to learn from the flip side also. Mamre, it's like, you know, sometimes you have a whole askama, and then you have another guy adds his signature. Avraham Avinu was planning to do this anyways, and he came and said, do it. It's kedai. And he was zoicha that the Eibishter was revealed in his chelek. So if you see someone that's doing something good, always be mechazik him. He's doing it without you anyways. Doesn't matter. You join. The Eibishter, that's as I was given. That was the story. Anyways, but so just in terms of chazering the story itself, remembering, so hu yoshev pesach oyel, Rashi says hu yoshev in the present. Avraham Avinu wanted to get up for the Eibishter. The Eibishter showed him to sit down. Oh, Shmulik.
Could it be like the brother of Avraham also was asked, are you believing in Eibishter? So it's the same idea. He followed along.
Okay, Haran was a different story. Haran got killed. Haran was not pasha. Haran was sitting on the. Haran was sitting on the fence. Haran wasn't pasha. You should know that. It's a story. It's a story with me. Right. I hear. You got the Haran. Okay. Anyways, so the Eibishter told him to sit down, and he said, "Chayecha, there's going to be a time when I'm going to be standing, and your children are going to be sitting to remember this mitzvah that Dayanim sit when the Eibishter stands. Elokim nitzav bad haskel." And 3 people came along. 3 malachim. Just remind you the story, and I have on this givaldige kashas. Took me a long time to think of an answer. Simcha, you'll tell me if the answer is a good answer. Shvere kashas on this. Avraham Avinu gets up, runs to them. He sends a shliach to get water. And he gives them to eat. He shechts 3 rachvatov, 3 lambs or calves, and he gives them tongue, and Imamish takes care of them. And then they tell him that they could have shayva shubalacha case chayel bein l'sara yishtechi. Your wife's gonna have a son next year, and Sarah laughed. The whole story, and all of a sudden the Eibishter appears again. Okay. The Eibishter appears again, and he says, "Lama zeh tzachka Sarah." Why was Sarah laughing? And she said, "Loi ki yareya." She said, "I didn't laugh because she was afraid." And Rashi also explains, she looked at her body and said, "Achrei bloisi haisali edna v'adeni zaken." It's not going to happen. And the Eibishter said, "Lama zeh tzachka Sarah." Haipolam Hashem davar kanaya. And he finishes shayva. Good. So I want to point out a small vart in Rashi that that opens a little bit of like a shtikla mekenzag, a little can of worms. The Eibishter says, a polam Hashem davar lamoyed. The Eibishter wasn't the one that gave the deadline. The Malach was the one that gave the deadline. So when the Eibishter says lamoyed, what moyed is he talking about? Lamoyed shamat l'cha esmol. Yesterday the Eibishter, simcha. Join us. Good. You made no mistake. Come here in the time for a good kasha. Good kasha. Okay?
So which one was it?
Rashi says the Eibishter told us to him yesterday. What was yesterday? This is the third day of the bris. I don't know if it was yesterday, but it was the day before. The Eibishter in the end of Parshas Lech Lecha tells Avram Avinu, this is Azah Eisen Akasha, that my whole teretz is Ula Yesh Loimer. If someone has a better kasha, I'll drop mine. A Givaldige kasha. If you look back at the end of Parshas Lech Lecha, that Chumashim ever wants, at the end of Parshas Lech Lecha, the Eibishter comes to Avram Avinu and tells Avram Avinu in Perek Yud Zayin Pasuk Tezayin, after he already had a bris, and the Eibishter told him to give a bris to Yishmael. What happens? Pasuk Tezvav, Vayemer Elokim Avram, Sarai Ishtcha Lo Tikra Shma, Sarai Kim Sarah Shma. We're changing her name. Uberachti Gamoisa. I'm going to bench her also. V'gam Nosad L'cha Bein, Uberachtiya. I'm going to bless her. V'yisa L'goyim, Malchei Am, many people Avram. Avram Avinu asked the same shaila that Sarai asked. He said, what did Avram Avinu say? Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayipol Avram Alpana v'Yitzchak. He laughed. Vayomer beliba halaben mea shana yivalid v'im Sarah bas tishim shana teled. He asked the same question. But more than that, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, the Eibishter continues, it says, Vesbrisi Akim es Yitzchak. The Eibishter already named him Yitzchak and said, Akim es Yitzchak asher teled chasar lamoyed azeh b'shana acheres. In next year, at this time, you will have a son. His name is going to be Yitzchak. Voila. The Eibishter already promised him. So let me ask you a shaila. This is a mamish shtarke shaila. Avram Avinu is in the middle of talking to Yitzchak. The Eibishter is in the middle of talking to Avram Avinu. He promised him yesterday he's going to have children. In middle of talking, the Eibishter sends 3 malachim, one of them to notify Avram that in next year you're going to have a child. Disturbs the discussion of Avram Avinu and the Eibishter, mind you, to notify B'suras Hazeh to Avram Avinu. What did the Eibishter send the malach for?
Why did he laugh?
So that's a shaila on Sarah. Why was Sarah such a problem that the Eibishter said that? But the Eibishter told him the day before, to next year I'm going to give you a son. The Eibishter even said what the name is going to be. Then the Eibishter is there, and in the middle the Eibishter sends 3 malachim. One of them, maybe you say, okay, 3 malachim. Okay, Avram thought they were people. Good. But the fact is that the Eibishter sent them. Each one had its own shlichus. One of them was to notify B'suras Hazeh. For what? So that's one way to understand. Kilu to assume. So it's very hard to believe that Sarai didn't know of this whole nevuah that Avraham Avinu had, because Sarai was part of the whole bris and the whole suda there, right?
And she laughed.
But she left the next day. He left the first day.
The Rashi explains not to say laughing.
Yeah.
He said,
He was mitoch simcha. Yeah. But the fact is, the Eibishter promised him already a child. The Eibishter told him when it's going to take place.
This was always looming.
Good.
Going to happen.
But now he tells him a date.
Right.
He tells him a name.
For real.
He tells him not only for real, he tells him for the first time it's going to be from Sarah.
No, first time, yeah. And he still sends him out to tell him.
And then while he's talking to him the next day, Shikter Ein HaMalach to tell him the same thing. What's the Eibishter doing?
Nothing but the shower.
He used to want to make Kash McBurn. He was busy. Oh, very interesting.
Good. Go, zag.
Very interesting. I don't know if you find anywhere in all of history Hashem comes to somebody not as Hashem.
No, but here he is
Avram.
coming as Hashem.
No, Avram is the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
Hashem is visiting. It's not Avram's story. He's not. Avram's not butler. Hashem is talking to me now. Probably was, but it's like Hashem came to him, not to be.
The scenario is definitely unique. Yeah.
He was visiting Avram. Avram was the master of the house. He was the.
Okay.
He's not coming in to tell him what to do, give him the voice, whatever. Already, he's coming in to visit Avram. He's not. I had somebody call me today, wish me happy birthday yesterday,
Mazel tov.
And by the way, can you help me? Right. You know what I'm saying? It muddies the. I mean, visiting him, even a good thing, like.
But here's the question. The question is, you're saying, one second, let me just, what you're saying is that the Eibush didn't want to mix. The Eibush, Kilo and Malach came to notify. The Eibush just coming as a guest. But the Eibush just, that would be if he's not a regular person. The Eibush just sending him in middle of the discussion to notify him something that the Eibush already said. It's like shkoyach. I'm saying, it's totally extra.
Why was it sent twice at all then? What was the point of?
That's the Shaila.
That's the shaila. What is he sending somebody to know? What is he sending someone to notify Avram? Something that he told him yesterday? And it's not pshat.
Maybe chazak.
The Eibishter Mamish, the way Rashi describes, and there's a beautiful word to this Fasamasal and so forth, the Eibishter sends a shliach. This doesn't happen stam. Each malach has one shlichus. He had one thing to do. He was brought down to this world to notify. After that, he went back up. He wasn't there. Precisely. Lamoyed ad kedei kach. And when he says lamoyed, so I'm going to tell you what the answer that I came with. Yeah, this is the shayla bothering me. Huh? No, Gabriel was to turn over his dime. Rafal was to heal. Michal, yeah. Surah Sazara. And he went back. There's a discussion about which malach. It says Avram turned to the Gadol Shebahem. It sounds like the Gadol Shebahem was the one that was turning over his dime. They're over. As we're going to hear by the Farbrengen later. So let me answer this question again. A svara. It's Torah, hopefully from the Shivim Panim. We find that Avram Avinu, Sarai, just a little bit. Sarai was coming to Avram and kvetching, why didn't you tell the Eibishter the son should be for me? Right? After they had the child, after Yishmael was born, whose idea was to bring Hagar into the house was Sarah's idea. Then, Va'ikal now, she started looking at her like, so can someone fill up for Michal another plate? Oh, you're good. You should know this nishtal leil shishi shir as good as a shir with shalom. So bekitzer, so Avram Avinu told Sarai,
Sarah brought Hagar into the house.
Yeah, she brought her into the house to have a child, and then when she started seeing that she's Eikel Bein now, she said, she turns to Avram Avinu, Haytachin, you didn't daven, it should be through me. Why all of a sudden then did she remind herself? So we discussed that a little bit last week. That it can't be from the Eibishter if she. Anyways. Now the Eibishter finally promises him it's going to come through Sarai. What does Avram Avinu say? And this is in Lech Lecha, the Parsha, at the end of Lech Lecha. It's psukim that we were quoting. What in the world? So you mamash killing the whole Shalom Bayis. She just finished telling you. I mean, it wasn't just, but I'm saying it was 13 years earlier.
To her it was just.
But to her, every day was just, right?
How many years before he noticed that she's pretty Michal?
But at 13 years, she's looking at it. She's about to send him away. She's watching his ashras of this Ishmael, which we're observing till today, and she's about to send him away, and the Eibishter now comes to, I don't know about, but and it says Lu Yishmael Yichya Lefanecha, and Avram Avinu says, it says I have for you a son. I have a name for him, Yitzchak. And like you pointed out from Rashi, that it was Al Shem a good laugh. Avraham Avinu says, Lu Yishmol Yechil Lefanacha. So I had a little vart. This is Shlomo Sternberg has to me Rabbi Shlomo Sternberg has to me last week. We were together on a Beis Shuvka Shabbaton. He said that the Lu Yishmol Yechil Lefanacha, the Abishah said, I'm giving you a son Yitzchak. So Avraham Avinu Pasha wanted Yitzchak should survive. He said, just give a bracha that Yishmael should want to live. He shouldn't want to bomb himself up. Then my Yitzchak is going to survive. He said, Lu Yishmael Yechil Lefanacha, I'll invite that Yishmael should want to live, and then my Yitzchak will survive. But actually, it's still ain't mikra yetzim de pshut. It's a little schwer. So I want to share a thought. Stop and think for a second. Look at Avraham Avinu. He served the Eibishter for 75 years. Tano Shmulik. 75 years. He's serving the Eibishter.
He probably didn't think it was deserved.
Good. We see that befeirish, right? Yeah. We see that. Come. You're just in time. Who could hook him up with a taler? Good. Chance. What are you, Chaimeh? Little shishi. Shmulik, אתה איתנו? אתה לא? Oh, yeah? טוב, אתה תוציא אותו ידי חובה. Oh, wow. Okay, so think about it for a second. Let's take a step back. Avraham Avinu came up with this idea. He came up with a brainstorm that nobody understood before. That you should know the Eibishter is not a getchka. The Eibishter there's only one God, and He's invisible. He's bli gvul, and He's the one that's mania all the galgalim. And mind you, when we think mania all the galgalim, the sun and the moon, we look at it like this kiddie story that he was thinking. The sun went down, the moon went up. In those days, they understood how the galgalim worked, which means they understood the mazalis. They weren't a joke. It's important to point this out. When the Goyim were Oivdi Kechav Mazalis, it took a few generations until they were Tipshim Gemurim, just bowing to Agachka. It was a process. The first generation that knew how the Mazalis worked, they had a real svara. And we know that today you could go to certain people will tell you your personality based on the Mazalis. Why? Because the Mazalis have an effect. That's the way the Eibishter is mashpiyah into the world. We know it's kegarsin biyad achaytziv. The Eibishter runs it, and they're like doimim. Even though the Rambam Mamish describes them balei deya, but they're doimim. The fact is, so they weren't nothing. And when Avraham Avinu thought, seeing how they're mashpiyah on the world, you know that the moon and the sun, they're koiches. They understood. They had chachmasa. It's brought the chacham from those in Eretz Yisrael that knew to taste the offer from each place, from the knainim. But I was in Petropolis in Brazil on Shlichus. There was a guy that told us, you should know, he was a planting, he was a gardener. He told me, he said, if you plant when the moon is this big in the cycle, the lunar cycle, it's going to grow 3 times quicker. And he proved it. That the moon chases it out, as Rashi, right? There's a real chachma to these things. So Avraham Avinu came and was wiser than all these chachamim, and said there's one Eibishter that is bli gvul, and he has to be shloi bal tzura. Okay. It goes hand. So it's a simple thing to understand that. Now let's try to hold on to Avraham Avinu's school of thought, that the Eibishter should reveal himself and start talking to what we're doing right now is a huge chiddush, right? And therefore, and not only that, for 70 years, let's say he was 4 or 5 according to one medrash, for 70 years he was pumping this religion. What was he betzim pumping? That everything else is narishkeit. All these getchkis, you should know they're all narishkeit. But he never had an interaction. The Eibishter never spoke to him. The Rebbe tells us, a beautiful sikha where the Rebbe says, at what point was he called a Yid? Avraham Avinu in Torah. At what point did the Eibishter start talking to him? When there's an Asayin. The Eibishter said, Lech Lecha. The second he broke out of his box, till then, he was saying his svaras. And he was fighting the whole world, and he went on Mesiras Nefesh. Also, I'm saying the story in Nimrod, according to Midrashim. But in Pshut Shemig, when the Eibishter gave him Vayera, and he wasn't doing it to make his point. Verkehrt. it was against the point that he was making. Because the Rashi brings right away that going on the way is Mema'etes Hashem and Mema'etes Hamama and Mema'etes Abanim. All the three things that Avraham Avinu believed will help him publicize the Emuna and the Eibishter, having his children and his influence and his name, everybody knowing, and it wasn't taking off. And he decided that's where also when he went against what he believed, that's where he started being a Yid in Parshas Lech Lecha. But Be'etzem, where were we? So Bekitzer, Avraham Avinu believes it's a chiddush for the Eibishter to talk to him, right? If you think for a second, what Avraham Avinu was taining, the Eibishter is not about Gvul and not about Tzura, and therefore it would be a chiddush for the Eibishter to talk to us, to get involved. Not that he was saying the Eibishter is removed. He was going around saying that all these getchkes are shtusim v'avalim. Then what happens is the Eibishter starts getting involved. Tells him, Lech, I have a land. Lech lecha ma'atzcha la'eretz asher areka. I want that land to belong to your children. And then the Eibishter makes a bris bein absarim with him. So let's try to think what's going on in the process of Avraham Avinu's recognizing. This is a process. It says Halach v'nasoi anegba. Avraham Avinu was developing a love for the Eibishter and developing a relationship with the Eibishter. So what happens? For 75 years was silence, alakav, at least. And the Eibishter says, go, I have a land. And then it's not pshat, the Eibishter tells him, okay, now I'm coming into nature. The Eibishter says, you're going to have children. They're going to have this land. Do you think it's happening anytime soon? Bris bein absarim, the Eibishter tells him it's going to be in 400 years. It's after they're going to be enslaved. The Eibishter gives him the whole 9 yards. And for Avraham Avinu, this is Pashat. For the Eibishter to come, for Elokus, for the Eibishter's word to come into this world is a huge chiddush. If you think about it, belief that the Eibishter is infinite, to limit himself to a specific family, to a specific thing, makes sense. It's a process. He's happy with the Eibishter coming. And then the Eibishter says you're going to have children. Now, as we discussed last week, the Eibishter said it to him many times. And each time, he was thinking, there's a matter of how exactly is this going to happen? The Eibishter should kick into my infertility is like beyond comprehension, right? This is slowly, Avraham Avinu is slowly developing this understanding that is, as Chassidus tells us, that the Eibishter is not Elokei ha'olam, the Eibishter is Elokei olam. The Eibishter is this is the Vayikra. The Vayita Eshel was at the end of this Parsha. The beginning of Avraham Avinu this is, meanwhile, you should know, this is not yet the story of Avraham Avinu's hashpah on all the people. This is Avraham Avinu's own journey.
So before Lech Lecha, I don't know how Simpson could fit that. How that there was no...
Al Kapanim, the Eibishter didn't reveal himself to him. You have to say there's a process to this.
There was that time when he was in a burning fire and didn't die. There was some sort of revelation of...
There were, yeah. But there's definitely a process. There's definitely a process to this. And then all of a sudden the Eibishter says, you're going to have children. And I'm going to make them V'eschel l'goy gadol, and it's going to be my nation. I'm going to give them this land. So the Eibishter is coming in. And he understands, okay, there's going to be a whole karbanis. He sees the whole vision of bris bein absarim. But this is, then when the Eibishter says you're going to have children, like we said last week, doesn't mean me. It doesn't mean the Eibishter is going to get into my kishkis, like Vayitzchak, like over here. The simcha of Avraham Avinu. It's interesting that Rashi says. One second. Avraham Avinu. So Avraham Avinu, unlike Sarah, Avraham Avinu believed, or Sarah at this point. But he still says, Lu yishmal yechi lefanecha. Ula yesh loymar. Avraham Avinu is saying, for the Eibishter to come into such a world, and to get involved, and to change, to get into the nitty-gritty of Teva, I have a son. Let's make from him a nation. The Eibishter has to. Avraham Avinu was happy. It's not that he had a chisaron in Emuna. He believed the Eibishter could do anything. The Eibishter created the world. But to say that he has to come in and to change. Okay? I think this will help us understand what happened the next. When the Eibishter says, next year this is what's going to happen. And the Eibishter says, you should know as Brisi Akim. Avraham Avinu, it's pretty straightforward that Avraham Avinu, for throughout the duration of the story, at what point do you know that Avraham Avinu discovered that these were malachim? Mamish at the end, after they left. After they left.
I thought there were some Arabs. Which Arabs?
He told them, Rachzu ragleichem, because they were coming with the Bali Avodah Zarah. It says in Pasuk, what's the lashon over there when he says that they were that he escorted them, l'shalcham, Pasuk Tezayin, l'lavoisam kasavar orchimheim. He still believed that these are regular people. So now let's go back to the question we asked. What is the Eibishter sending these malachim for? He thinks they're regular people. He thinks they're...
That one particular malach that came to tell him.
No, the lavoisam means all of them. All three...
My question is about one.
Right. But the question is, what was the Eibishter doing with this whole story? He thinks they're regular people. And Uli Shloimar, that I think this is to a deeper understanding of the story of Sarah. She said, listen, if the Eibishter decides to give us children, it's going to be a supernatural thing. But these people that are coming out and they're saying, Tine bein l'Sarah ishtecha, they're mamish regular people. Avraham Avinu invited them. Let's eat chema v'chalav, and they went and they ate and they bought. And they start saying, Sheva Shuva Lecha, we're going to come back next year to celebrate with you. It's a cute bracha, but when a person gives a bracha above his pay grade, it's a little bit, Shkoyach Yossi for joining us. We have to remind again, the shur is l'schus Mayin Amuna Chaya, Bas Chanaleya, and there's going to be a Farbrengen sharing Psuras Tevis right afterwards, like Malach Machal. So Sarah hears a nobody giving a bracha way above his pay grade. He comes in, they think they're people. She just prepared a su'udah for them. And this guy says, I'm going to come back next year. I'm telling you there's going to be a ben. And that's why Sarah laughed. She knew she's going to have a child. The Eibishter said, I don't have a suffix that Avraham Avinu told her the nevuah. Maybe he didn't share what his thought was, Lu Yishmael Yichel Lefanecha. But once the Eibishter said you're going to have a son, he brought a uleyash. Simcha said, maybe the Eibishter, maybe Avraham didn't share with Sarah his nevuah. So that would be a good svara if he held on to the idea of Lu Yishmael Yichel Lefanecha. But once the Eibishter said no, and the Eibishter said, I'm going to give you a son, Yitzchak, so why wouldn't he share such a psura with Sarah? For sure he would share with her a psura. Ela Ulay Shloimar, when she heard a guy come by, they believe they're regular people, and he shares, I'm telling you, it's going to be you're going to have a son, and I'm going to come again to celebrate with you. So she's laughing. She's saying, to that extent, b'derech hateva, she's looking at her body, and she's saying it's not happening. The Eibishter can do whatever he wants. But the Eibishter wanted to show them that the Eibishter is all the way the king in this world. You should know that it could be in a way that hinika banim Sarah. That Sarah in the time she's going to give, not only she's going to nurse all the kids, and it's going to be through her guf. It's not going to be like she wanted and she said. And this a little bit gives a little bit of the understanding why the Eibush is like a little bit, she said, I did. What happens if you come into the house? The lady said, laughs. She didn't believe. No, you did laugh. And don't say you didn't laugh. What's the Eibush saying? Yeah, they didn't even. Don't tell me you didn't laugh. I was there. What is the Eibush saying? B'shas the Eibush wanted to say, no, you should know. I told you yesterday, but the Eibush wanted to send malachim, people. And you should know that I believe that, I'm saying, if this, in Kainam Advarim, this is a little bit of an introduction to why all of a sudden Avram took the Breitkeit to start arguing with the Eibishter. Okay? If you follow what I'm saying, this will answer a few shilas about the next story in the Parsha. Understand? The Eibishter wanted to show them this could be common talk between regular people, and it's going to happen with Derech HaTeva, and that's what the Eibishter is saying. Like what I told you yesterday is going to happen what this person told you.
When Hashem said it at first, it sort of understood as Mamalim in a
The Eibishter is just going to do his thing.
Happen. What do you do?
Exactly.
This guy comes along and says it, she's like, wow, this is Hashem's way of saying it's going to actually happen in Teva.
Oh.
So why not skip the first stuff?
Why didn't the Eibishter l'chatchila send it through a malach? So then he would b'chlal no have achiza. If a guy comes by and says this is going to happen, the Eibishter wouldn't even expect her to believe.
For sure you laugh.
For sure she'll laugh. But I want to take this, this is its own verse, but I want to take this to help us understand the next thing. I want to ask another klutz kash on the next story. We have a very fascinating story coming up that the second malach comes along and says, I'm going to turn over his dime. He actually didn't tell it to Avram Avinu. The Eibush said, Amachas anima Avram. And then Avram Avinu understood that this malach is going to turn over his dime. What should have Avram Avinu done? Based on the Avram Avinu that we know, what should have Avram Avinu done? He should have got up, ran to save Lot.
Like he said he would.
Not only like he said he would, like he did. He went against four malachim, which made, like we just quoted Rashi, V'noichi Afar V'Efer. He said, I had no achiza b'chlal. It was just the chest of the Eibishter. And he still didn't make a double guess, and he ran to save Lot. Now, he Pasha goes on a whole back and forth with the Eibishter to save 5 cities, and Lot is out of the picture. He never even asked about this malach saving Lot. He doesn't make a gesture to save Lot. What's going on? That's first shaila. The second shaila, put Lot on the side. Avram Avinu understands the Eibishter is Melech Olam. And the Eibishter says, he didn't question the Eibishter throughout the whole time that, you know how long since the Eibishter promised him children until the Eibishter promised Yitzchak? Lech Lecha he was 75, right? Avram ben Chamesh Shana. And this is 99 by the bris, and next year he's going to come as Al ben Meah Shana. Yeah? He didn't have any questions. The Eibishter says, the Eibishter is going to do. By the 5 malachim, he didn't start arguing with the Eibishter. The Eibishter should save all this. By the 5 malachim, by Kedela Oimer, he didn't say a whole bunch of innocent lives. Well, Avram Avinu had nothing to say. All of a sudden now, they're all going to be turned over. These are Reshonim Mushchasim. Mamash Reshonim Mushchasim. And he's going into, and he's not defending them. He's coming to say that maybe the tzidkas of 10 people. Why is he arguing over this? All of a sudden,
just at least save Lot. Why didn't he say that?
Just say, he didn't even say save Lot. So first I have to chazer vart to Reb Getzel. Reb Getzel has a moedik vart. He chazered last year and the year before. And I died to chazer. He says, just this is mamash an aside. It's not connected to this discussion of Rashi. Avram Avinu stood up and was arguing with the Eibishter over 5 cities, right? What was he matzliach with? 0. Avram Avinu was fighting, was matzliach 0. He walked away. The Eibishter says, once the Kateger left, the Eibishter disappeared. Lot, which was the only thing he had working for him besides choosing to live in Zdaim, was the fact that he had achnas sarchim, and he's matzliach to save a whole city. Tzayar says, I want to go to this city. Why? It's not that he even fought for them. He said, I'm afraid, please don't take me to where Avram Avinu lives. Because over here in Zdaim, I look like a tzaddik. That's why you're deciding to save me. If I'm going to be near Avram Avinu, I'm going to be a nothing mamish. Don't take me there. So he says, okay, I'm going to take you to Mitzar. And he takes him to Mitzar. And the Eibishter says, even that I'm also going to listen, I'm going to save this city. So Reb Getzel has a moedik vart. If you didn't appreciate Getzel, now you're going to appreciate him 10 times more. He said you should know that's the difference between a perfectionist. Avram Avinu was looking for tzaddikim. said, I'm going to find 10 tzaddikim, find 40 tzaddikim, and then we'll save everyone. But he was looking for perfection. He was looking for perfect people, and that's going to save the cities. Lloyd wasn't looking for people. He said there are bigger Reshonim. These are only small Reshonim. They're not as big as they could have been. He wasn't looking for perfection. He said, Abishai, you should know that it's a new city. They couldn't have done so many Averas. They're young. And the Abishai listened to him. From here, you should know, you don't have to look to be perfect. Don't look to be perfect. Don't look for perfect people. Do always the best. But, yeah. Chaim. So, Bekitzer, so it's a good Shaila. Why all of a sudden did he decide to Shabbos Simcha? Why did he decide to not to run for light? You see that when Avram Ulay Shleimer, just the svara, hopefully from the panim later. When the Eibishter shows him that in Teva I rule the world, it's not pshat. It's going to be a supernatural thing. I'm telling you, bein l'sarei shtecha means not like I'm telling you. It's getting like the common people say, like this malach that you think is a regular person. Why was she laughing? Ha'ipolim Hashem davar. I told you the same thing yesterday. What was the Eibishter telling her? That was just to reiterate. I asked the Shaila before. This is the answer. Why did Eibishter send malachim to say something he said the day before? The Eibishter Pasha wanted to clarify. You should know what I said the day before. That's the pshat of what this guy is saying. Mamish begashmis. And that's why the Eibishter said to her, why are you laughing? I was talking about like what this guy is saying. Hashadai Ma'elu and this Me'eha and this that you don't believe. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So once the Eibishter showed himself in such a way, the Eibishter said, and the Eibishter said, I'm that to that degree involved in Teva. Avraham Avinu said, 1 second, if Loit is a tzaddik, and there are 10 tzaddikim, so they're going to survive anyways. The Eibush is getting involved in the world. Why didn't Avraham Avinu run to? If he believed there's chamishim tzaddikim, so why didn't he go collect them? He believed that nothing's going to harm them. Nothing's going to harm them. What could harm them? The Eibishter is involved in the world. The Eibishter mamish takes control of everything going on. The Eibishter sent, and the Eibishter, so speak, the Eibishter is mamish sent malachim. So there, Avraham Avinu says, I don't need a daige for light. Light is in great shape. I may as well daige for everybody. Maybe light is not in great shape. This will save him. And Avraham Avinu starts this whole back and forth with the Eibishter. Good. That's our order in an understanding. There's Rashis that support the shtickle, but I'm not going to get in too much. So now I want to get back to the other style this year. Few vertlach. First of all, there's a moire de gevar to the Sfas Emes. Moire de gevar to the Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes asks the Shaila, the Gerer Rebbe. There's a different. We said it last week. There's going to be 2 styles of this year. One is like understanding the storyline and from Rashi's perspective, and other Rishonim, and also vertlach. I was thinking of doing 2 shiurim, but we're combining them. Okay. So now to this nekuda. The Sfas Emes sagt so. The Eibishter sent 3 malachim. One to be mevaseh the zera, then Avraham is going to have children. The second one was to cure Avraham Avinu. The third one was to turn over his doim. Then one came. Now what happened? After maybe mevaseh the zera, I think it was Malach Michal went back, and now there's left Gavriel and Rafal. Who saved Loit? It says 2. Oh, Rafal, the one that was Merap Avram, he went to save Loit. Rashi gave us a whole spiel that Malachim don't do 2 shlichusim. So why didn't the Eibishter send 4 Malachim? So you could say, okay, because the Eibishter, because it's the same. So the Sifsei Chachamim brings already that it's the same nekuda. The being merapa and saving Loit is the same thing. Yeah, but if every malach is, it's not just he's just sent with one thing. His metzius in this world is for one thing, so he should have expired, and the Eibishter sends a new shliach. Either send 4 lechatchila, or why? So he says a beautiful word. It's very geschmack. He says when the Eibishter said you have to halt kapaja. When the Eibishter sent, the malachim, he wasn't sure yet that he wants to save light. And therefore he didn't send the malach. Why wasn't he sure yet? Why? Listen closely. He didn't save light. He wasn't sure that he wants to save light because he wasn't sure yet if Rus HaMayavis, if her gear is going to be kosher. Listen to this. What's pshat? So the word goes like this. Why did Eibishter want to save light? Why Taka does he come? He was a oizverf. I mean, the fact is he left Avraham Avinu. The Eibishter was quiet. The Eibishter didn't say any nevuah until they parted light me'alav. Then the Eibishter spoke because he was a Rasha. He started off right, and the only thing he had working for him was the mid of Achnasa Sarchim. Listen, it wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. He had to also be Machnas Sarach. We'll soon talk about Achnasa Sarchim. Anyways, so the Eibishter really saved him because of his descendants. His daughters afterwards got married to him, right, in the cave, and from them came Moav and Ammon. From Moav came Rus. Rus is the baba of David HaMelech. Now, Moavi v'loi Moavis. The truth is that why were they miranin after David HaMelech? Why were they saying David HaMelech is illegitimate? Because the truth is there was a machlokes. It says lo yavayu Moavi b'kal Hashem. We learn Moavi v'loi Moavis. Why? Why Taka is the Eibishter not ready to accept a Moavi, a male, but the Moavi Yois were able to be accepted? Why? Because the reason why a Moavi is not able to become part of Klal Yisrael is why? Because when the Yidden were going through, they didn't come greet us. They let us. But the women never had to go out. They were never meant to go out. So it was not a problem that they didn't be Mekabel Panim Am Yisrael. How do we know that a woman, that she didn't need to come out? They learned it from Sarah. Sarah was the one that etched in stone. She was the first Yidina that said, guest, but I'm staying in the house. Because if she would come out, think for a second, if she would come out, then the hanacha would be that the Moaviyos should have also come out, and B'meila Rus would never be accepted her gear, and then the Eibishter wouldn't need to save light, and B'meila there would be no reason to send the malach to save light. It's gag, right? That's why the Eibishter didn't send the malach. One Sarah, they asked where's Sarah, and he said she's ba'oyel. They said, Bazayit is there's what to save light for, and that's why the malach. Okay, that's here another part. Okay. The Sfas Samas, yeah. So listen to this. Okay, now another part. Okay. So, Bechlal, about the Bris Milah, there's a whole bunch of a lot. Avraham Avinu was B'yosem Koyev and B'yom HaShlishi. So, Chachamim say that we'll wrap up in 5 minutes, Chevra. So, it says like this. Why does the Torah tell us, or Chachamim told us, that this was in the 3rd day of the Bris? Why? Chazal wanted to teach us that generally we have a klal ha'oisig b'mitzvah patim in a mitzvah. If a person's busy with one mitzvah, he doesn't have to get into another mitzvah. And therefore we would think to ourselves, Achnasa Sarchim, Avraham Avinu is in pain. He's now in the midst of working with the mitzvah of milah. Now he has to stop the mitzvah of milah to invite guests. That's why the Chazal told us, no, he was in the middle of the bris, and he still went to Kechoy Mayoim, because you should know Achnas Sarchim overrides. And there's the Moshe Rebbe says like this. It says that G'doyle Achnas Sarchim Yesem Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. Why dafke Kabbalas Pnei Shechina? If you want to make something sound great, I'm saying there's enough ways to say it. You don't have to tell us to drop the Eibishter for that. I'm saying why such a dramatic vart? So you have to say it's Yosim Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. Say it's like being Mekabel the Shechina. It's as, you know what? Avram Avinu left it, not because it's greater, because they're both equal. Why Yoser? So he says, because we say by Kiddush Levana, if we say in the end over there, that Ilu Zochinu to be Mekabel Pnei Shechina Pamachas B'Chodesh Day. Yeah, the Kavan Dayin. What's the lashon? Dayach. It would be enough once a month to be. If we would be, that means this mitzvah being Mekabel Pnei Shechina would be enough once a month. So if we would say that Achnas Sarchim is like that, people would say, you know what? If I take in guest once a month, I'm good. That's the Yosem Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. It's more than that. You should know, though, it's not enough once a month. I just know that in Russia, Molflag Zayin to say that if someone was in your house for less than 6 months, it wasn't considered that he was in your house b'chlal. It's not considered. Okay, in America, if someone's in your house for 2 days, he's like a nadvan already. You have to bring chocolate, flowers, and a bottle. Like he's a whole gvir. You should get a plaque. So you should know that Pamacha, once a month, that's Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. This is Yosef Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. Share another Gishmak Evart. It says Ve'ekcha pas lechem ve'sadu libchem achat avodah. Rashi says very Gishmak. Rashi points out right away. It says Yukach no mat mayim. Water Yukach no should be taken. Rashi says through a shliach. But ve'ekcha pas lechem, I'm gonna take a pas lechem. And here you see Maisa of a similar banim, which is P.S. just another answer on why last week Avram Avinu said V'yitn li matanis. Why was Avram Avinu saying about Mitzrayim? We asked the Klotz Kasha. Everybody asked the same question. Oh, so here's another answer. It's a good answer. Why did Avram Avinu say? He says V'yitn li matanis. He says L'man yitav li ba'avurich v'choyse nafshi b'glalech. So he says besides me living, they'll give me matanis. I mean, forget the fact that he didn't even mention Sarah in the whole story, but the fact that he's equating getting matanis within the same breath of him remaining alive is baffling. So one of the tirutzim is that it was Ma'asav Islam Labanim. He knew that Am Yisrael is going down to Mitzrayim just to take out Loitzi Shalol Rav Kimtzul Shem Badagim, and just to be Mevar Nitzoitzes like it's brought Zav. So therefore, he knew that it's totally b'maisa avis. So he said, I have to get matanas over here if we want the Yidden to be able to do their job properly. So over here, you mamish see this maisa avis also. You see this mamish over here also. You see yukach na mat mayim, but it says ve'ekcha pas lechem. The Eibishter said, because the water you send through a shliach, we look at Rashi. Yukach no says Rashi ayidei shliach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shilim lebanav ayidei shliach. Shneimar v'yorem Moshe es yadai v'yach es hasela. That water the Eibishter gave to Bnei Yisrael when they needed it through a shliach, through Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Sifsei says, but bread, the man the Eibishter gave himself. Because v'ekcha pas lechem, Abraham Avinu himself went to take bread. Shmak Evart. Eibishter pays to the T. But B'frat, Maisa Avis, it's another thing is it's fascinating also the Nisim that we have to know they come from Avraham Avinu. But another very powerful word on this is V'ekcha pas lechem. A person, this is in the vein of in the discussion of that we were in the middle of having about Achnasas Orchim, that why does it say Va'ekcha pas lechem and not Va'etna pas lechem? I'm going to give you bread. He's like talking to them. He says, no, he doesn't say Va'etna. He says Va'ekcha pas lechem, I'm going to take bread. Here you see that Yosem Masha Balbayis Yosem Ani Yosem Balbayis. The guy says, I'm going to, it's true that I'm going to give you bread, but you should know I'm taking for, what I'm getting is much more than I'm giving. When a Yid does Achnasas Orchim, he does Chesed with another Yid, what he's more taking than what he's giving. Va'ekcha pas lechem. Yeah, another Geschmack word, it says Pesach ha'oyel. That it's come from it's come from they told us Yaakov Yosef of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Pulna. He said that what's the pshat that Avram Avinu sat Pesach oil kechay mayim. He said a tzaddik, this is a good word, very nagia. A tzaddik always feels that I'm just by the entrance. I'm not really befitting to be inside. Everything that I'm doing is a lead up to what I'm about to hopefully get to do. A person that believes I'm stable in my level, I deserve, this is who I am, I'm shaykh to this already. Allah, Ekupnish tzaddik. Tzaddik Yosef Pesach ha'oyel. The Eibishter is there, and he always feels like he's sitting by the entrance. I didn't scratch the surface. I'm zoichet to get to where I am now. Let me hold on. I'm not really in. That's the Tnua of a tzaddik. Yeah, and the Rebbe always reminds us, the Rebbe Rashab cried on Parshas Vayera and said, why did the Eibishter reveal himself to Avraham Avinu and not reveal himself to me? And this is not a story that we tell our children. The Rebbe always says that like myself is similar bottom, that if they told us, Rabbi Seinu taught it to us, it's pshat that each one of us is shaykh to man. I want to see the Eibishter. And as we know, as the Rebbe teaches us, that there's no such thing to have a false belief. Right? The Rebbe says, we believe Mashiach's coming today, muzayin that Eliyahu Navi came to Tveria yesterday, because otherwise it wouldn't be a real belief. What do you mean? Maybe he was going to prove that today Mashiach didn't come. Doesn't matter. But Amuna of a Yid is Amuna. Right? What is it? Amuna. So if the Rebbe, if a Yid asks as a shayla and he believes he deserves, a Yid should be able to see the Eibishter like Avraham Avinu. He has a bris. A Yid is shaykh to see Gilui Shechina. If he'll see the Eibishter the way Avraham Avinu saw that, you have to be a merkava a little bit more. You have to reveal your Yechidah Shebenefesh. But the man and darfman, and knowing that the Eibishter is ready to reveal himself to us. Yeah.